Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about SOC 2 audits. By the end of this presentation, you will have a high level knowledge of what a SOC audit is, the origins of SOC, a brief history, and also how to choose which SOC is the right one for your organization. So let's get into it. What is SOC? Now, SOC stands for Service Organization Controls or System Organization Controls. And this has been defined by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. This is a body that deals mostly with financial and accounting, and they formed this because they needed to give an account of the controls that are put in place to make sure that the data, especially the financial data or data affecting financial reporting, was safe. So this was formed, and let's get into some terms that you should know. Service organization. In auditing, this refers to the organization or the company that is providing a service to a user and or a user entity. So this is pretty straightforward, which means that whoever is providing a service to a user, which would be a customer or another business, that would be referred to as the service organization. The service organization is also the organization that will be audited in relation to SOC. User entity. Organizations that retain the services of a service organization, thereby they are usually shared responsibility with regards to control criteria. So the user entity is whoever the customer or the other company that retains the services of a service organization. So that might be me, you, or another company. Pretty straightforward. Trust service criteria. This consists of 5 categories used to test and report on the suitability and the design and effectiveness of controls as it relates to these categories. These include security, availability, confidentiality, processing integrity, and privacy. Now, this will come further down and you will understand it better. Service auditor. This performs a SOC 2 review of the trust service criteria within a service organization environment. So it's basically the person who is going to be testing and looking into whatever controls were put in place. Subservice organization. This is a vendor whose controls, in combination with the service organization's controls, are necessary to meet service commitment and system requirements that fulfill SOC 1 objectives or the trust service criteria for SOC 2. So there are situations where the vendor of an organization might affect the ability of that organization to meet the SOC 1 or SOC 2 objectives. This organization would be categorized as a sub-service organization. Service commitment. This is the expected level of service offered by a service organization. So this is definitely whatever the organization promised to deliver, and the person receiving the service might be a customer or another organization. SOC audits are used by organizations to validate that they have security controls in place to protect their data. Now, this is something that will be very good for the company because it provides some level of assurance that the organization takes security seriously and that they are putting steps into place and they have the due diligence to make sure that their data is secure. So we're going to look at a brief history of how SOC came about. In 1972, the Statements on Auditing Standards, which is known as the SAS 1, was a formal outline of the independent auditor's roles and responsibility. So this came out and it was the first version of evaluating controls. Now, 2 decades later, in 1992, the SAS 70 emerged, and this determined the effectiveness of internal controls in relation to financial data. And it's developed into audit procedures of evaluating these controls over the information security. Now, in 2010, there was a statement on standards for attestation and engagement, which is known as SSAE, and the first version was version 16. This replaced the SAS 70 with SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. Now, these address controls over internal controls for financial security and also a way to report to the public, respectively. The SSAE 18 was a refinement of that standard, and it gave more clarification as to the attestation and the issuing of SOC reports. SOC reporting options. You have SOC 1, which is generally used to handle financial data. So any organization that handles financial data or that might affect the financial reporting of their client or customers, this would most likely be the report that they would need. A SOC 2 report applies to the controls that are under 5 categories, and these categories are called trust service criteria that I defined earlier. And these criteria all support the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, they needed a way to give the public this reassurance without jeopardizing their confidential information or trade secrets. So they developed a SOC 3 report which would redact all of this sensitive and confidential information into a SOC 3 report. So let's go to the types of SOC audits. The type 1 SOC audit is a review that is telling you about the status at a given point in time, and this focuses on the suitability of the controls in achieving the control objective. Type 2, this includes a review of suitability of controls, but also it determines the effectiveness and the efficacy over a period of time, and this can take up to 6 months. Now, both SOC 1 and SOC 2 reporting options have type 1 and type 2 audits. So it's easy to get it confused. So that's the reason why I did it this way. You have SOC 1 and SOC 2, but for SOC 1, you also have type 1 and 2, and SOC 2, which is mainly security, also has type 1 and type 2. Now let's move on to which SOC report is best for your organization. Now, to determine which SOC report is best for your organization, you need to look at several things. So if a service organization handles data that impacts the client's financial reporting, they may need a SOC 1 report. However, if the service organization that transmits, stores, processes information of other clients but does not affect their financial reporting, then you know you might need a SOC 2, because you're going to have to talk about the efficacy of the security controls that you have in place. Before we go on to deciding whether a SOC 1 or a SOC 2 is needed, the auditor definitely will more than likely do a readiness assessment, and this determines the gaps that exist as it relates to SOC requirements. And based on the results, the recommendations may be made to remediate those gaps before you decide on the SOC 1 or SOC 2 reports. Now, let's look at the SOC 2 trust service criteria and what they entail. So, as I said earlier, there are 5 trust categories. The first one being security, which reviews the controls that relate to protection of systems against unauthorized access, damage disclosure, that would compromise the CIA triad in the environment. The second one is availability, and this evaluates the controls that ensure that the data is available for operational use. Three is confidentiality, and this looks at controls that protect sensitive data. All of the controls that make sure that only authorized objects or subjects have access to that information. And each time when they access that information, the question will be asked if it is illegitimate. The fourth one is process integrity, and this reviews the accuracy and timeliness and also the completeness of system processes. So this is not to be confused with integrity in terms of the CIA triad. This integrity is speaking on the completeness and accuracy of a particular process. So it does not have to do with the integrity of the data itself, but the process that is used to make this data into what it is. Is it accurate? Does it do what it's supposed to do? Is it matching with the documentation? And so on. And the fifth and last one is privacy. And these controls ensure that personally identifiable information, or PII, is collected, stored, used, and returned, retained, and disposed in the proper way. Now, the privacy criteria is a very big one, and organizations have to make sure that they really need to use this trust service criteria, because it might increase your budget and it will take a lot more work than if you didn't have to use it. For SOC 2 audits, the security trust criteria is compulsory, but the service organization may select additional criteria to report on. So there are no questions as to whether you will have to do the security version or category. You just have to determine which other category is applicable to your organization. The service organization, then they will determine which criteria to choose based on their commitments. And as we defined commitments earlier, the commitment is basically what the organization promised to deliver to their customer. So if it's something of giving 99.999% availability, then apart from security, you'll need to employ the or evaluate the availability category. Now, I hope that you gained great value from this presentation, and I look forward to bringing more content to you. The SOC report is a gold standard of compliance, and that is why I believe that it's important for you while you're on your cybersecurity journey to understand what this compliance is and what it looks like, and just a high level understanding. So when you hear it mentioned in different forums, you have a better idea and it can help you in contributing to the discussion. As I said earlier, I hope that this was of great value to you. If you haven't subscribed as yet, just click on that subscribe button, like, and share. I look forward to bringing more content to you. Thank you again, guys.